For every product that becomes a staple of daily life, there are countless others that come and go with very little impact on the world. And I don't think any company goes into creating some sort of product hoping it fails or thinking it will fail. They go into it thinking this is going to be something that influences or changes whatever field, whatever area it's being released into. These people think it's going to change the world. Very few of them succeed, but a lot of them come out with this hype like it's the next big thing, and it just doesn't happen. So that's what we're going to look at now, is those ones that came out with a lot of hype, but ultimately failed, whether right away or after a couple of years. So these are some of the biggest 1990s product busts. I can tell you I remember almost all of these. There's a couple that I don't remember, but they made me laugh so much that I said I had to include them. And you'll have to let me know if any of these were things that were in your rotation as far as what you had in daily life. First and foremost is one of those era-defining failures, I guess. When you think of 90s product busts, what's the first thing that pops in your head? If you said Crystal Pepsi, you're right on the same wavelength as me. When I was researching this topic, that was the first thing I put down. Crystal Pepsi was what it says. It was a clear soda, and man, it was launched with so much hype in 1992. It had Van Halen's hit song Right Now as part of the advertising campaign. Since it was 30 years ago that it was out, I can't tell you exactly what it tasted like. It was different than what a normal Pepsi would taste like. I just remember that. It was said to be the clear alternative to regular sodas. I mean, clear sodas weren't exactly new. 7-Up, Sprite, Slice. I mean, they're grayish, but they're essentially clear. They're not that dark brown like cola. It came in with a bang, but within a year or so, it was already being parodied on Saturday Night Live, Crystal Gravy. There were also just this swarm of other colorless products. Colorless dish soap by Palmolive. Colorless beer. One of the final straws was the Coca-Cola company creating Tab Clear. They said as a kind of kamikaze product to just torpedo the whole crystal industry. By around the spring of 1994, the final batches of Crystal Pepsi had been delivered and sold or thrown out, and that was it. It was done. Did any of you ever try Coors Spring Water? The idea in and of itself actually makes a little bit of sense, with the Coors Brewing Company constantly talked about how its beer was brewed with real Rocky Mountain spring water. In 1990, they decided to get in on the growing bottled water craze by selling Coors Rocky Mountain spring water. It came in glass bottles, and it needed an actual bottle opener to open the top of it. But this was another epic fail, epic overreach by a company. When you think of Coors, you think of beer. You don't think of water. So I guess hardcore fans of the Coors brand maybe would try it just to see what Rocky Mountain spring water tasted like. Like it's going to be different than any other water. They even tried to give it flavors, lemon, lime, and cherry, and original water flavor. It was quickly discontinued, with few tears shed. That's one of those stay-in-your-lane products. Like when Colgate made frozen entrees. It's like stick to toothpaste, so Coors stick to beer. Something that was a little bit ahead of its time was the Nintendo Virtual Boy.
It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
This came out in 1995, so it was virtual reality. It was a headset, but it was on kind of a tripod that you could put on the table and lean your head in to play games. This was knocked immediately for lack of full color, discomfort of how you had to play it, where your head would be. Reviews said that it made video gaming antisocial because you're locked into this VR headset, and that the virtual reality didn't add anything to the games you were playing. They said it was a novelty. There were only 22 games released for it, and it sold for the price of $179.95 in 1995, which is about $366 when adjusted for inflation to 2024. The Virtual Boy was discontinued about a year later. Most people enjoy fast food, some kind of fast food. It makes you feel like a kid again. McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. But when a place like McDonald's starts to promote food just for adults, ooh, you know that's going to do well. Do you remember the Arch Deluxe? The irony with this is that the Arch Deluxe at the time was the biggest budgeted fast food promotional item ever. It's estimated that McDonald's spent over $300 million in 1996 when they started to promote the Arch Deluxe. What made this burger for adults?
Quality ingredients are just the start of a great burger. Crisp leaves of iceberg lettuce, the stone ground mustard sauce, the soft comforting potato roll, I'm in the zone. All layered together in one symphony of taste. I made it for you.
A potato, flour, sesame seed bun, quarter pound of beef, a circular piece of peppered bacon, lettuce, tomato, American cheese, a special Dijonnaise mustard mayo sauce. It was officially released in May 1996, so just as I was getting ready to graduate high school, and even though I was thrilled to be seen as more of an adult as getting out of high school, eating a certain kind of burger from McDonald's did not seem like it was being an adult. The burger was a massive fail. They stuck it on the menu and kept it there until early 2000, but reports at the time said that by mid-1998, McDonald's knew this was going to be a fail, and they just stuck with it, just praying that it would catch on. So I don't want adult food at fast food restaurants. Do you want floating orbs in your soda? Do you remember Orbit soda? This was made by the Clearly Canadian company. If you remember Clearly Canadian, I think that's still around. Non-carbonated drink with these little floating bubbles that were colored. They floated with the assistance of something called gelin gum. It looked a little bit like a lava lamp. It was called a texturally enhanced alternative beverage. If you need all those words to describe what you're creating, that should tell you that it's not going to be something that catches on. Much like the Arch Deluxe, Orbit Soda came out in May 1996, so right as I'm graduating high school, I did not go get an Arch Deluxe and then buy an Orbit Soda and sit there and say, wow, the 90s are a wonderful time. It came in 6 different flavors, but sometime in 1998 it was discontinued. And you can find unopened bottles on eBay, so if you bought some and then didn't drink it, you could make some money off it. Interestingly, there's something around now that I'm sure some of you have heard of called bubble tea that's kind of similar in theory to what Orbit Soda was, and that's actually pretty popular. So maybe Orbit's was a little bit ahead of its time. A potato chip that's also a laxative. Boy, I'm sure glad I never tried Lay's Wow chips. These were fat-free chips introduced by the Frito-Lay company sometime in 1998. The secret with these was that they contained something called olestra, a fat substitute. Initially, in its first year, these Lay's Wow chips, which were everywhere in commercials, they made $400 million in its first year. But the problem is that olestra, when taken in larger quantities, would cause abdominal cramping, diarrhea, anal leakage. So if you sat down with these Wow chips and had more than the stated serving size, they basically turned into a laxative. They even had to start putting warnings on the bags of chips to tell you what was in them. That's a sign right there. If you're like, these are fat-free chips, they're great, but they're made with this thing that's terrible. Like, you should know that's not good. By the second year of these being out, the sales of Wow chips had dropped by more than half. They were rebranded to Light chips, and they stuck around until the 2010s. But the formula was changed, so it wasn't the original Wow chips. Speaking of very 90s products, do you remember Zima? It was a clear, lightly carbonated alcoholic beverage, kind of like a wine cooler or a cooler in general, seen as an alternative to beer. This was also made by the Coors Company. This came out in 1993, so after their spring water had failed, they decided to do something more in their wheelhouse containing alcohol. These commercials were everywhere in the early to mid-90s. The cool alternative drink with the young people. Ooh, I'll have a Zima instead of your stupid beer. People tried it, and in its first couple years, it was initially relatively popular. But then this drink was routinely made fun of on late-night shows with David Letterman, seen as a women's drink, and it died a slow death, finally being discontinued in the United States in 2008. Cereal on the go is a good idea. Kellogg's Breakfast Mates might not be that much of a good idea.
For mornings at your pace, there's new Kellogg's Breakfast Mates with a bowl of your kid's favorite Kellogg's cereal, milk and spoon in one. It's everything you need to make breakfast easier.
These were single-serving cereals that were released in 1998, so Kellogg's brands, Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops, Mini Wheats, Corn Flakes, those types of things. But it also came with a 4-ounce serving of milk, which required no refrigeration. And this ended up being kind of a confusing product because even though this milk required no refrigeration, so you could put it in the cereal aisle, they decided to put this in the refrigerated section of supermarkets. And also having cereal with warm milk that you poured from a little container like that was just weird. This product was such a fail that within a year, by 1999, it was pulled off the shelves, and it damaged Kellogg's reputation so much that General Mills leaped over them to become the #1 cereal company in the country. Naturally, you want a detergent for your clothes that is the most powerful you can get, but do you want one that's so powerful that it destroys your clothes? That was the story behind Persil Power Detergent. This was released by the Unilever company in the mid-1990s, and they had figured out that most of these detergents out there had similar stain-fighting properties, so there was little to distinguish between them. So they decided to make a brand that would have the strongest stain-fighting property possible. In May 1994, Persil Power was released. There was already a Persil detergent, which many people felt did the job fine. The problem was with this Persil Power that after a few times of washing your clothes, not only did it strip the color away from the clothes, but then it would also start to eat away at the structural integrity of your clothes. So you'd put on your shirt after washing it a few times in Persil Power and it would just rip the sleeves off. Within a couple of years, after all of these complaints about what this did to people's clothes, they issued a product recall and shelved Persil Power. And finally, the final 90s product bust is a symbol of luxury and unnecessary that I thought was too funny not to include, and that is Thirsty Dog or Thirsty Cat bottled water. So bottled water for your pets. I get it. Those of you that have dogs, cats, you love them. They're your family. They're like your children, and everyone has them now, especially after COVID. But in the 1990s, to buy special bottled water for your animals, man, that's just very unnecessary. This product was released in and discontinued in 1994, so it did not last long. There is not a lot of information out there about this product because it was gone so fast. Although I can tell you the waters were flavored for the animals, so Thirsty Dog was crispy beef flavored, while for the cat it was tangy fish flavored water. Can you imagine being a young person in 1994 after a night out partying and you come home and you need water to kind of sober you up, and you open the fridge and grab a bottle of water not knowing what it is and it's fish flavored water? I could just imagine people taking a swig of that and puking all in the fridge. I don't know. That was the funniest one. When I saw that, I couldn't believe it was real. But there are pictures of these bottles with like a dog face or cat face on the bottle of water. I would assume most of you out there had never heard of that one, but had you heard of the other 90s product busts? I would think the Crystal Pepsi or Zima or the Arch Deluxe or the Wow chips would be the ones that you'd remember the most. The 90s were an awesome time to be alive and growing up, but these products definitely did not age well for us that grew up back then.